Good evening, all of our fine fans out in podcast land. I am your host, Scott M. Graves, here with another exciting, enlightening episode of the Are We Here Yet podcast. With me, as always, is my intrepid host. Couldn't think of another adjective for you tonight, Cam.
I like host. That's an
But
apt one.
well, that's not an adjective. That's the noun. But the intrepid. And you know what? This person is extremely loyal to he's my partner in crime with All Things Podcast, and he's highly reliable and he's highly competent. I'll say that about you as well.
I will take that. I will accept that, and I tend to agree with those.
Which means now this episode has to be flawless. Okay.
Which one hasn't been so far? So.
Welcome, Cam, once again. And tonight we have a wonderful guest on. And we're going to talk about entrepreneurship in the area of risk and insurance. Now, there's some of you right now that are listening, and when you hear the term insurance, you're saying to yourself, man, I don't want to talk about insurance. It's something I have to get, something, I might not necessarily want to spend my money on. And I feel that there's a lot of consumers, not just for private stuff, but I'm talking right now about our consumers, our listening base, the entrepreneurs, the small business owners of the world. It's one of those many forms of avoidance. It's one of the things you don't want to do because you have to do it. But I promise you, by the end of tonight, we're going to make at least some aspects of risk and insurance exciting.
Try our best.
Right. So tonight, I introduce to you the podcast community here at Are We Here Yet podcast to Doug Guilbert. How are you?
Good. How about you, Scott?
I'm doing all right. We've known each other now for about a year. I never say your last name. Is it, because I know you're French Canadian, is it Gilbert or is it Guilbert, or how do you say your name?
We ask everyone to call us Gilbert, but the correct pronunciation is Guilbert.
Right.
Ah, look at that.
I never say your last name. That's the thing, like you're just Doug. So then I'm thinking, wow, I have to introduce you. I should have figured that out ahead of time.
Because I'd be correcting everyone and say, excuse me, you call me Gilbert. No, it's Guilbert.
But in Woonsocket, in Woonsocket, it would be Gilbert. Hey, come down to the mill. Well, yes. It's good to have you here. First off, because, it's always good to know who we're talking to. Why don't you let everybody know a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how you got to where you are?
So I have been in the insurance industry 20 years. I started back in January of 2000 as a claims adjuster right out of college, and worked for a company called Wausau Insurance.
Oh yeah.
As an entry-level claims adjuster, handling comp claims, and worked for several different workers' comp carriers. One of my last companies was Cambridge Integrated Service Group. I handled some World Trade Center claims, and then became a claims supervisor at a company called One Beacon in Massachusetts. And after handling claims for about 4 years, decided that I wanted something more challenging in my life, and got a little tired of the claims side of the business, wanted to see what I could do to try to help people and provide solutions, and took vacation time and ended up studying for my property casualty insurance license, interviewed at a few different agencies, and accepted a position at my first agency back in 2004.
That's interesting. How many people go from the claim side into being producers? Although my time in insurance was extremely limited, I didn't know all that many people who did that. Or is it more usual than
I think it's more unusual. I'm not aware of anyone. I'm sure there are other people that have done it. I haven't met anyone else that has actually done that, came from the claim side.
Yeah.
And went to the insurance, to the agency side. But like I said, I'm happy I did it. It's a lot more positive on the agency side. Where on the claim side, you're always dealing with challenges and confrontation, where on the agency side, we're always trying to help people. So it's more positive.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure. So for those that are still learning the ins and outs of insurance, the claims adjusters are the people responsible for. I'll let you explain, right? I'll set the stage. You're responsible for determining the outcome on a claim, but you do
Yes.
more than that too. Whenever there's an investigation, they might have to do that kind of thing for people, and it doesn't always turn out great for the consumer.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's neither good for the consumer or for the agency or for the carrier.
Yeah, the number one responsibility of a claims adjuster is to look at the policy, and evaluate whether it's the claim should be paid or not, and then doing what's called a 3-point contact, which is where, if it's a workers' comp claim, you're contacting the injured party, you're contacting the employer, and you're contacting the medical provider. So you're trying to get 3 points of information from the on the claim to determine whether it is a work-related accident or not, and whether it should be paid or not. So it's
A lot riding on that. A lot of people waiting with bated breath.
exactly. So it became for myself it became pretty mundane, and didn't enjoy it as much as I first had when I got into the industry. And like I said, it became, just by doing your job, you're looking into claims. It becomes confrontational, whether it's confrontational with the employer because the claim's not covered, or it's confrontational with the employee because there's an issue with the claim, or whatever the circumstances are. Like I said, it becomes challenging. The whole job is very difficult and challenging.
So in your current capacity, you're building a book of business from scratch. You've had, and we'll get later in the episode, we'll get into sort of the other sort of turns that your entrepreneurial careers have taken. You're right now focused in insurance. You're building a book of business. You're also helping to build an agency, correct? Or do I have that mischaracterized?
That's correct.
Okay. So, this is not an easy thing to do in any time period in history. And right now is a particularly, at least to me, it would seem like it's a particularly daunting time. But you're in what's generally considered, one of the graying industries in the United States. In other words, lots of people retiring, finishing their careers, finishing being owners of agencies and whatnot. Yet it's not, because I've had just a little bit of experience of trying to set up an agency. It's not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of moving parts. And even within the selling, the producing, we call it in insurance, of building a book of business, that's a really dynamic environment too. You've got a lot of people to please in order to get a policy right and to get a policy executed. So why don't we start sort of at the 60,000 foot level and then kind of drill that down? How has that been for you? And what are some of the things that other aspiring entrepreneurs in this space might want to think about?
Well, anyone that starts a business, there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be completed. You need to become registered with the Secretary of State, get your federal ID number, find out where you're going to be located, get a business insurance policy, potentially an error and omissions insurance policy. And then in our industry, you also have to become state licensed in every state you want to do business with as for the legal entity. You also have to get individually licensed in every single state that you want to do business in. And then once you do all of that, then comes the most challenge. You have to come up with marketing material, business cards, website, the back end agency management system, and all the other things that you need to do to operate a business. And then, like I said, getting whatever you need for the office itself, your physical office. And then the most important thing is trying to get clients, finding clients, obtaining clients, getting clients, and then proceeding with a business plan. So one of the first things you create when you're starting a business is the business plan, and then trying to operate based on your business plan. And then my number one goal is eventually in the next 6 to 12 months is to try to bring on an employee. And I'm talking to some interns right now, but it's to try to bring on an employee at some point. But one of the biggest challenges I'd say we face as starting an agency, just the way the industry works is we could basically get paid as the insurance companies get paid. So essentially, when we write a policy, it can take anywhere from 3 months before 2 to 3 months before you start getting your first commission payment. And if the employee, or I shouldn't say employee, the employer pays monthly, it can take, you could get paid over a 12-month period from the insurance company. So right now I'm still operating at a net negative basis, based on what I've invested into it and what I've returned. I haven't even I've maybe received less than 10% of what I've actually put into it, and very, very, very minimal, almost no revenue.
So that can be very tenuous for those listening and thinking, oh, I think I'll go into this, because over time, it seems like most of the guys I know and gals that have been producers for a long period of time, they got these big book of businesses, and that's true. But particularly if you're going to start up your own enterprise, in a world where it's increasingly hard, regardless of the industry, to get capital up front, which is almost impossible to get from a bank, let's say, for instance, you've got to have some kind of a runway in which to be able to get that agency up and running. And that's true. There's a whole host of different industries where it's a similar thing, where there's either a fee structure or a commission structure. There's a lot of retail where the net margins keep going down, even though the consumer's price of the product keeps going down too. So it's on the cost of that product to the retailer, that cost keeps going up, but their net margin keeps going down. It's the equivalent of, somebody not paying you a commission sooner than later. And somehow you've got to make the business run on less and less net margin, or for net margin that you've got to rely on much further out in the calendar, which is a huge challenge. No cash flow means no business.
Right.
Or like in your case, when do I bring an employee on? When does it all start to aggregate into reliable and appropriate dollar amounts? Right. On a monthly basis. Is there that similar equivalent where, there's a lot of, I experienced it myself, what I'd call the commodification of things, right? So the more that large agencies or that, large carriers can sort of just that industry trend of commodifying the relationship, which doesn't seem to ever work for producers, right? Because if you can build good relationships with people, that's hard to do without a human being involved, right? So that's sort of the value add from my perspective for a producer, right? And I'll be interested to hear if you agree with that. I think you do. But how do you combat sort of other elements within the industry coming back and sort of commodifying the experience? And they're doing this in a business where, like I said, there's a lot of other entrepreneurs, some small business people that sort of don't want to have to deal with their insurance. So they wait till the last minute. They don't think that they want to have a relationship with something. They just need to buy it. You know what I mean? Kind of a thing, because they don't want to spend a lot of time on it, because it's just something they understand it's something they have to get, and they don't want to deal with it. These are all like big sales challenges. So before I start adding more components to what's already a lengthy question, maybe you can start to sort of unpack some of that.
Yes. So I would definitely, I'm interpreting what you're saying as transactional. Almost to me sounds as more of a transactional based purchase versus a consultative purchase, where they have a relationship with their agent.
Let me reframe. Yeah, let me better encapsulate it. There are elements within the industry that want to transactionalize the relationship. That way it works better for them.
Yes.
because and
The
the
direct
opposite works
writers.
better for independent agencies. So how
Yep.
do you find ways to combat that so that you get the business?
Yeah. So that's a two-pronged approach. You see that more transactionalizing. I see that a lot more from direct writers, where I'm not going to name any companies, but the direct writers are going through, especially for personal lines, of trying to sell to the end consumer, trying to make
Without
it,
an agency involved. Yeah.
yeah, without an agency, trying to make it seem like it's very simple. You can pick whatever you want to pay for a premium. You can, just click these buttons. We'll automatically quote multiple companies for you. And so they make it very simple for the end consumer. And, a lot of consumers are not well educated about the different coverages that are available. And so that's placing a lot of onus on the individual consumer to make a decision on what's the differences between all the coverages, what do I need for coverage, and I'm purchasing this policy without even ever talking to another human being.
Right.
I have no idea. I just purchased, I saved myself some money, but is the coverage I purchased going to be adequate for what my needs are?
Right.
Just think about something as simple as, do you want a glass, deductible? Do you want to waive your glass deductible? Do you know what uninsured motorist property damage means? Do you know what uninsured motorist bodily injury means? Do you want, some companies offer brand new vehicle replacement on, vehicles that are less than X number of years old. So there's a lot of different coverages that are available, and most companies offer many of the same coverages. But people may not understand, what's available, what's not available. Even something as simple as rental reimbursement coverage. Every company offers it. Every auto carrier offers it. You can get it as low as $15 a day, let's say $25 a day, $30 a day, $35 a day, $50 a day, $75 a day. What made you decide that you wanted the, $15 a day versus a $30 versus the $50 a day? So, having that interaction, explaining and that's just on the auto side. The homeowner side gets even more complicated. And I could go into, on and on about different coverages. Like, do people understand what special personal property means? Some people may say, oh yeah, I know what that means.
Or the three main valuations, right? For what am I thinking for co-insurance and that kind of thing?
Yeah, on the business side, but yeah, I mean, that's co-insurance provisions that I comply. I mean, insurance is very complicated. And so I find that on the consumer level, there's a lot more direct marketing, and a lot of people don't really, I don't say don't appreciate, but a lot of people, just will purchase it. And it's also a generational thing. People, I don't know, you have Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X, you have all these different generations, and younger people tend to do more stuff online. Older people tend to enjoy more of that personal touch. So, and the interesting thing will be when the younger people start becoming older people, are they still going to want to do the online situation or online purchases? Or are they going to then appreciate and understand, maybe purchasing something from
what happens when I need to ask somebody a question?
Right. Right.
It's usually people who get burned first. You know what I mean? You make your first mistake, and that does not just insurance, but you make some sort of consumer transaction happen, and it doesn't go well, and then you realize, I'm realizing that the thing I'm buying, I'm just gonna say it's kind of like selling people guitars and saxophones and things. Cam's laughing because Cam started working for us at my former business, which was a band and orchestra instrument shop.
Yes, it was. Good old
Remember that,
Smash
Cam?
music. Yeah, good old
Yes, and
Smash
people would
music.
start asking questions thinking, if I get this one question answered, I'll know everything I need to know to go and do this. And then they'd realize that that one question being answered raised for them another 10 questions. And then they realized maybe I should just listen to what the person's telling me.
Right, the person
The internet didn't tell me this.
right, the person that's held
Are
most
there,
of it, that's been in the weeds, if you will.
yeah, Doug, are there ways that technology in the business, whether they maybe there's examples you can point to that are being used, and maybe there's some that you've thought of, but just it's yet to become a trend, but you'd want to see it. Are there ways that technology could be used that better the experience for somebody like you that wants to own an independent agency? You know, why is it that so many people at the small and independent and localized level, technology is often not used to better leverage our relationships with our consumers? But how could it be used? Or are there cases, you know, where it is being used and it's better, it's upping the ante for the local business, the local agencies?
Well, I think it's a great question. In today's environment, I think we're experiencing that right now with the COVID situation, where unfortunately a lot of people have to work from home, and myself included, doing a bunch of work from home because, you know, and even the amount of time I can put into it, it's limited because of my wife's work situation. So being able to meet people by Zoom, technology like this, as well as using DocuSign or other electronic signature capabilities, as well as online quoting, online marketing, everything else that we can do from an online basis. I think this is starting to, or I should say, this is going to change how we do business going forward. Not just from our perspective, but I think even clients. A lot more clients after the COVID situation are more agreeable to meet online via Zoom, or maybe even prefer that versus a face-to-face. Or a lot more people are open to signing their documents electronically. So I think the attitude or the thoughtfulness that consumers have towards an electronic medium in doing business has changed a lot. And I think in the long run, and this is outside my purview, this is a real estate issue, but wouldn't surprise, you know, you see a lot of these businesses, technology companies, insurance agencies. Why do I need to have a very expensive Class A office suite where I'm spending, you know, $10,000 to $20,000 a month to have like 30 to 50 people or 100 people, you know, where, you know, most people can work remotely, you know, do the same job. I mean, our agency management system is fully web-based. It can be accessed electronically. We can all communicate with each other over the phone, and you have different phone technologies, internet technologies. So, you know, we can do a lot of everything that we can do within an office can be done remotely. So why do we need these expensive offices moving forward? So
Yeah, it's interesting because I hear exactly what you're saying. If you look at the larger, more mature agencies, you know, a lot of times they, you know, where does this money go, right? So real estate becomes one of the prime drivers for investment, you know, for investing money that the agency's made. And maybe that continues, but it changes, right? Hub and spoke co-working. And maybe it's not only there for their own employees when they do need physical space, but it's hub and spoke co-working where any number of other people from other companies come to pay and utilize that service. And think of all of the worthwhile potential new relationships there are for the insurance company with an office environment that's as dynamic as that, with so many new people coming in all the time. You know, there's just, you know, there's like ways that I think, you know, that people will reuse space, you know, to their advantage. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, having a lot of expensive real estate, especially if they haven't paid for it yet, you know, why do it, you know?
It's not the future at this point. That's not, there's other ways you can use that. Like you were saying, you've put so much money into this company already. Why even put more money into that real estate that you know you're not going to get back at all? Why even add that extra hassle to it, you know? Which, you know, just another way to kind of save yourself those extra steps. You don't have to add that extra stress too in these already stressful times.
I've got to imagine for you, Doug, that it's a little easier. You can get more meetings done, because you're not driving from place to place. Is that the case right now?
Yes. Yep. You can be a lot more efficient. You can have a lot more meetings or networking meetings. There's a lot more you can do with doing, things electronically. I'd say the only downside is, I think and this is with a lot of people in this environment, is that if you are constantly working from home and, you tend to, work crazy hours, I don't want to say million hours, but crazy hours. So if you're at home and you get a call, you're more, it's at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever that time is at night, you're more inclined to work, different hours than you typically would be, because your home office is right next door to your bedroom. So
Yeah. Well, and that brings up a great point, that idea that you have to kind of self-discipline or condition yourself to, like, okay, just because the environment hasn't changed, business is over for now, like
Right.
voicemail will take it. I can call that person tomorrow, kind of a thing, right?
Right.
Are you, as like so many of us that are our age, you have kids, and are they home right now, or have they started to go? It's fall right now here in New England, so are they doing like a hybrid model of school, or because then you have that to juggle too, right?
yes, they are at home right now. My wife is in a high risk position at a hospital.
Yep.
Oh.
So we've decided to keep the kids at home, to do virtual learning, so that God forbid anyone gets infected at the house, we don't take it back to school in a higher risk situation.
Yeah.
Plus, if I have to ever meet anyone, I'm taking the necessary precautions, wearing a face mask, but still meeting with people, puts you at a higher risk. And if I do have to meet with someone face to face in a closed environment, so we decided they're doing homeschool. So
Okay.
I should say not homeschool, but virtual learning.
Right.
And again, that makes it difficult with work schedules and everything else, but being able to work from home and the flexibility with that, makes it a little easier.
Yeah, it's how, and I just have to ask, this is a little off topic, but how are your kids doing with virtual learning?
Last year, it was very difficult, I think, because it was new to everyone. And I think it depends on the child's age. I have a son who's 13, and he's more independent, and he can do things pretty much on his own. And he understands the assignments he has. He can follow through. And the model for his school is it's almost like a live classroom. So he's pretty much there, immersed in everything throughout the day. Where my daughter is 9 years old, and she has it's not as immersed as his is, and she's not as independent as he is. So
Yeah.
she needs a lot more help and assistance, and makes it very difficult to work throughout the day because of the assistance that she needs while she needs the help. So
Yeah, my kids are actually the same age. The genders are, well, I was going to say the genders are reversed. No, they're not. I have two daughters, 13 and 9. And the 13-year-old, similar thing. 9-year-old, very similar thing. And the 9-year-old is more academically inclined under normal circumstances. She's finding the virtual thing very, very, very frustrating. And a lot of it is just that our children had relatively limited access to computers before this, particularly the 9-year-old. And so, she just doesn't know how to use the platforms that they're given. And frankly, it took the schools a while to figure things, just simple things out, which I don't fault them for, but that 8 or 9-year-olds are going to have a hard time using Google Docs because they've never used a scroll mouse on a, on a laptop, as an example. Right. And the kids will blame themselves when things don't work right. They just assume that it's something they're not doing. And so it's almost like, I dare say, a form of mental abuse at first, until we all figured out what was going on, so to speak, both the schools, parents, the children themselves, and so forth. It's definitely been putting everybody in a petri dish of social experimentation to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Right. It's
So,
very
anyways, getting back to the task at hand. So, so generally speaking, I mean, how is it? How long have you been in your entrepreneurial endeavor of building this agency? Have been 100% focused on building the agency, and where is that at right now? How is it meeting some of your expectations? I mean, we also probably don't have to reiterate that you're doing this under the filter of the worst pandemic in 100 years, and all the challenges that come with that. So, I mean, how is this going so far?
I think, in my opinion, I think things are going very well. I'm happy. I'm meeting and exceeding expectations I had set for myself. But as we had previously discussed, the biggest challenges is the financial receipt of funds from the carriers, which I pretty much knew getting into it, and I knew it was going to be a long horizon. I mean, one of the things that we haven't talked about yet is also carriers. Is getting insurance carriers is extremely difficult for a brand new agency. So
how so? Just is it application processes, things like that, or is it like more...
It's an application process you have to go through, and they evaluate you, and then they see how many other agents we have in this area, and how much business you're going to write with us, how long you've been in business, how long you've been in business. So it can be very challenging getting new company appointments. And so I'd say right now, that's probably one of my biggest challenges, is getting different carriers to say, we're going to do business with you. And it's been going positive. I mean, I think right now I have, I don't know, 5 or 6 direct company appointments, but you really need to have, I don't know, 10 to 20 company appointments. I have more that are in process, but it takes a while to have the carriers give you those company appointments.
Well, and that just gives you more of a wider array when you try to place people's coverages. You have more companies to choose from to quote and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways of accessing insurance companies, if you don't have a direct company appointment, through what's known as wholesalers or aggregators, where, I can access pretty much any company that's out, almost any company that's out there in the marketplace. The challenge is if you're going through a wholesale aggregator, anyone else, you end up basically sharing the revenue with them on some type of split.
Another step in the food chain. Yeah. Another middleman. Yeah.
Yep.
So a decade ago, when I spent my 30 seconds in the biz, the one of the big catchphrases with everybody, because for them it was a little more than a catchphrase, but everyone was talking about cyber liability. Nobody understood what that was, but they were all like, man, this is going to be this huge, the opportunity is going to be in this new coverage of cyber liability and the coverages that will be associated with that. Where are the hot trends, or where are the different ways or different coverages that if you're an entrepreneur building your own independent book of business, where should you be looking?
Do you mean from an agency, or someone that's an agency, or just a generic business?
Yeah. No, like if I, when you're either a producer or you're an agency owner, a new agency owner, like what, and I guess they're two different, they could be the same, but they could be two different perspectives. I mean, or even are you looking for, where are there new industries or new coverages that are required in new industries versus just going after the traditional, home, auto, BOPs, other commercial coverages and the like?
Well, I mean, it's kind of ironic, but maybe communicable disease exposure.
And here we all are laughing about it, right?
No, I don't know. We have a COVID. Are we gonna have the next COVID? Some other Ebola or some other, communicable disease coming out? And
You
Um,
work in insurance, you end up having these conversations.
That's right.
but it's true. I mean, a couple of years ago, they had, was it the H1N1? It was either H1N1 or there was some other disease that came out, and a lot of the insurance carriers ended up coming up with that exclusion, the communicable disease exclusion.
I think they did. I think, well, I was in the business and I think SARS was the issue, but then a
SARS, it
few
was
years
SARS.
after that, it was H1N1.
Yeah,
And I
SARS,
was out by then.
H1N1. And so, that disease, that exclusion's been out there. It was a matter of time. So obviously everyone's significantly impacted right now. A lot of business owners have a loss of business income as a result of it. There's a few massive lawsuits out there trying to see if there's a way that would be covered by the insurance carriers. But in terms of the next popular, up and coming coverages that are available, cyber, because of technology, I'd say was definitely, one of the more popular or, innovative coverages that has come out. Employment practices liability insurance, which is otherwise known as EPLI, has been around for a while, but, I think that is getting more and more traction. EPLI, cyber, and then you have the newer coverages. I shouldn't say newer, but you have these broadening industries like cannabis industry and the hemp industry, where entirely new, a marketplace that wasn't around, a couple of years ago. Now all of a sudden, cannabis is being made legal. Not cannabis, hemp. Hemp has been made legal on a federal basis. Cannabis is still illegal federally, but you still have a lot of insurance carriers. This you'd say the standard insurance carriers are not writing hemp insurance right now. So
That's interesting. Even though it's been made a legal agricultural product,
same thing.
they're
A lot of banks aren't even banking hemp as well.
right, which we know about that. Yeah. That's interesting. So it's not always so much that there's new coverages coming on the marketplace. It's that traditional types of policies are being amended to reflect a particular industry's changes.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
With the instability for various reasons that's created in industry, how is that affected? There's two I'm thinking of. One is workers' comp, which has become, it's harder for companies, especially companies with a relatively bad record, because the companies just don't have money in some cases to pay for the policies yet. I mean, you can't operate without it. The other thing I just want to mention, and maybe you have some interesting stories about, is it's always been shocking to me, even today, how many businesses that really require professional coverage, EPLI, and they just, because it's an optional thing, it's like they're just not going to pay for it. And the cost of it compared to not having it when they need it, in industries like, an obvious one is just like restaurants that just hire a lot of waitresses and hire a lot of, they just got a lot of people from a lot of walks of life, all under one roof, working under different circumstances. My chosen profession, outside of what I do now, the entertainment business. I mean, it's like, you really should have these coverages, especially the cost of them versus the benefit. But yet people still, if they can save $800 and they're like a $5 million business, they're going to save the $800. And I'm like, what?
You know why? Because you see that especially for businesses that have been around a long time. They often take for granted, I've been in business 10 years, I've been in business 20 years, I've never had a lawsuit before. So, they think a lot of business owners feel, because they've never had never had a lawsuit, and they've been in business a while, it's never going to happen to them. I'd say that's the number one response I get. You should really consider this coverage. Oh, I've been in business 20, 30 years. I don't need it. I don't need the coverage. I've been in business so long. Never had it happen. Don't need it. So you could say the same thing besides EPLI. I mean, how many people on the personal line side own homes and they don't have flood insurance on their home?
Right.
And the classic thing with flood insurance is, I live on the top of a hill. I'm never going to have a flood. It's not going to happen to me. I'm not in a flood zone. But yet, flood insurance is relatively inexpensive if you don't live in a flood zone, anywhere from $400 to $500 a year, depending on the coverage amount. But people don't have it. So same thing, earthquake insurance. An earthquake is never going to happen. But it happens all the time with business insurance. People don't feel that they need it if they've never had a loss. Cyber. How many companies recently have you heard of on the internet and TV that have been hacked for cyber? Every single day, I'm getting an email. Barnes and Nobles just got an email 2 days ago. Your account has been hacked at Barnes and Nobles.
Yeah, I got one of those emails. So I'll tell you a quick story. We couldn't write a cyber policy to save our lives, and outside of our territory, there was a hospital system, a sizable one, but not a major market, but just outside a major market, probably 6 or 7 hospitals owned by this company. But they had an executive lose a laptop in a public place, and unfortunately, that laptop didn't. It wasn't that this executive was accessing people's health files via the central system. This laptop ended up having several thousand files of people's either their financial or their personal and health information potentially in this laptop. Loses the laptop. I can't remember if it was an airport or something. They lost it in some public place. They never actually had the issue of somebody, breaking into it and, stealing that information. But as you know, in a state like Massachusetts, we were among the first in the nation, I think we're the second or the third, to say we consider that a breach, and it's X amount of dollars. I think at the time it was $3,000 per type.
Whoa.
Per infraction. So let's say you had 100 files, individual person files in that laptop. And you had, for each of them, you had their personal information, you had their financial information, you had their health information. That's $9,000 times 100. That's just the fine. Then, of course, you've got to go to all those people and say, no one has stolen your information to our knowledge, but we have to tell you, according to state law, that this has happened. And then you're paying for all this marketing, and you're paying for people to come in and deal with the emergency, right? The people who are going to help you with your Google positioning, your SEO, to make this bad news go down as quickly as possible. Very quickly. And then all of a sudden, people are like, well, what about that cyber liability coverage? So yeah, I have a question about that too, by the way. At the time, there was no coverage in cyber liability that was really doable for truly small business. A decade on, there's more small business that do some online sales, or they're using the internet and they're interacting with people somehow in order to garner sales, and they end up getting people's information. So has coverage sort of caught up so that a wider range of businesses at different sizes can actually get that kind of coverage?
Yes. So cyber, similar to a lot of the other coverages, they're pretty much manuscript, where it's on the general liability policy. There's standard insurance company forms that most of the companies use, where on the cyber, it's more a customized form. So the thing you got to be careful about cyber insurance is, like anything else, but especially on cyber, is sometimes you get what you pay for. So sometimes something, you can get it really, really cheap, or it's a throw in under one company may say, hey, we'll give you a minimal amount, but it's very, it can really be a matter of what you pay for with cyber. A lot of companies will say our product's the best, but again, there's such a wide ranging of coverages that are available with cyber. There's the big companies offer it, as well as surplus lines companies also offer the cyber liability insurance. So typically, you tend to see on the bigger carriers, admitted carriers, when they offer it, it's sometimes a little bit more expensive. but sometimes you get a better policy than you do if you go
there's less
cheaper.
hold.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
Is it harder in states like New York, California, Massachusetts, where there's a robust set of law, fines and precedent and all that in that space to get coverage, or is it easier because there's more, established laws and precedents set in court for what happens, and the steps that companies have to take?
Well, it depends. It depends on the size company. It depends on the what the exposures are. But I'd say in general, you would think that what I've seen personally is that the pricing seems to be sometimes a little more competitive because the carriers base it on what precautions have you taken, what methods have you put in place in order to try to prevent such occurrences from happening. So like New York, for example, requires that businesses have a cybersecurity plan. For certain, like the insurance agencies in New York have to have a cybersecurity plan.
Yeah.
So if you have the right things in place and you follow the instructions of a cybersecurity plan, then you should be at a lower risk than someone that doesn't have any plan, hasn't put anything forward to how they run their business operations from a cyber.
So have processes in writing and in place that you've trained all of your staff on. Have have your wherever you're doing your digital monetary transactions, you have that. You have an SSL cert on it, and you make sure that it's at the highest standard it is required or better for cyber risk.
Yep, and sometimes, and some companies will actually offer a free service where they'll go on your website and assess your cybersecurity risk. Some companies will go out there and I don't want to say try to hack what you have going on. Depending on the bigger type of account you have, they'll evaluate what type of setup you have from a cybersecurity. And if they say you're at risk, you have, significant issues here and there, they'll notify, as part of the purchase of the product, they'll notify the client and say, you have vulnerabilities in this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot, you need to fix them. So,
right.
Which, that's smart from the insurance company's perspective because they don't, if they can help mitigate the risk and help control the exposure for someone they're insuring, they want to do that so that they don't unnecessarily pay a claim that maybe they didn't otherwise have to pay because of mistake.
Yeah, and it becomes, at the same time it's doing that, it becomes the value add that would attract a prospect in the first place, there are resources similar to that in other aspects of business. One is on the side of dangerous chemicals and dangerous industrial processes. Well, I can't speak for Rhode Island where you are, but Massachusetts, another one of your states, we have something called the Toxic Use Reduction Institute. I don't know if you've ever interacted with them. They're a state agency, and basically what they'll do is for companies that have to deal in a lot of different toxic chemicals, they'll come in for no charge, and they'll help assess the risk factors in that company. They'll make assessments. In cases where the assessment involves some sort of a cleanup, then generally speaking, the company's given ample time to clean it up. They're not fined as long as they adhere to the recommendations of Tory. They clean it up. That Tory comes back, says everything looks good, and they're on their way. That company never had to be fined for any sort of malfeasance or irresponsibility. The employees are now not exposed. The owners are not exposed. Anybody that's involved with that business is not exposed to whatever exposure might have been there before, or this happened prior to any real exposure, and no one gets in trouble. You know what I mean? So it's a non-punitive way to come up with a better result. And then, of course, the next time the insurance is written on that company, most of them see a great reduction simply because the risk exposure has gone away in some cases. The only real big one that was there, the chemicals and stuff. There's various ways, that people, I'm saying this now for the listeners who are business owners of various size businesses who, if you've got issues like this with certain things, cyber issues, cybersecurity issues, or toxic chemicals, things that are dangerous, risk exposures for your company, almost always there's some private or quasi-state or state agency that can help you reduce or eliminate that risk. And most of the time it's for free.
Wow. I didn't know that.
You just have to know where to look.
Right. Interesting.
Remember that, Cam.
Right, when I need my
Cam's starting a new business. Now, this gets us talking about some of your other entrepreneurial endeavors, as long as you care to, Doug. Cam here wants to start a business making mead, and as soon as he gets really good at it, then we're going to sort of like, infuse it into one of our other podcasts that are in the family of SMG podcasts. So now, Doug has done various other things in his past. You care to sort of elaborate on any of that?
Oh, I have lots of hobbies.
That's what entrepreneurship's all about.
Yeah, I've had a lot of failed businesses. Yep, I've had I've done some candle work. I've done some hobby for honey, not a paid company, but I've raised bees, and I had my own honey. So if you're doing mead, that is definitely something. I don't know if you raise your own bees or you're just going to purchase the honey, but
I did not know. Yeah, I just started this as the hobby myself. Just got some honey, some local honey, and started following the instructions more or less. But yeah, maybe someday down the line I'll
is it local honey
It
or is
is
it
actually.
China honey?
No, it's local because it's right down the street from me actually. Maybe not right down the street, maybe 2 streets, but they have their own, like you see them out in their farm, just little bee huts just out there. You buy it, they're at the side of the street. And,
Is that Liz McGowan or Liz Bastide, or is it somebody else? No, you're in Londonderry, not Derry, right?
Yeah, no, not Derry. Yeah.
You can see how local this is getting.
right. No, yeah, it's right down the street from me. I can't remember their names off the top of my head. My friend actually lives right next door to them though. So
How many hives do they have?
they only have the two. I think I only saw 2 or 3 of the boxes. I don't know what you'd call those, the bee boxes, I guess. But what else? What would you say about the honey? Because I've read that local honey helps with immune system and pollen. Oh, is my mic? Am I not close to the mic? I lost my train of thought. We're gonna have to cut that.
You read my chat in the middle. Sorry.
I know. No.
Why don't you get close to the mic, and we can't hear you, man?
Oh, can you not? I thought I messed with this.
Well, we can now.
Okay, I'll be like right on top of it.
You want to start that again? Let's start.
Technical
Okay.
difficulties.
All
All right. So yeah, so I was reading something about. You can tell me what you know about your honey at this point, since you've raised bees. Is it true that it helps with like your own immune system? I've read that the honey that the bees collect in the local area, all the pollen, helps with local allergies and helps your immune system get used to those. Do you know if that's true at all in your experience and in your knowledge, your bee knowledge?
I've read a lot about it, and I've seen some articles that say it does. I've also seen a lot of articles that say it doesn't, that it's actually almost more of a psychosomatic situation where
Really?
It doesn't necessarily help. However, I can tell you from personal experience, after people have had my honey and the feedback I got when I was raising bees, was that I'd say a lot of people came back and said, it has helped me. So,
Okay.
I mean, does the science necessarily match what, people's opinions are? Maybe not, but if someone takes something and it makes them feel better and they don't need to be on medication because they feel like the honey is, they don't have an allergy issue as a result of taking the honey, and at the end of the day, it makes them feel better and it works for them, then what's wrong with that? So,
Right.
as long as it's healthy.
They're sweetening their food with something that's not processed and is just so much better for you than highly processed sugars of any kind.
Right. It just
Actually, hold on.
okay. It's nature. It's literally nature's candy. It's perfect. I mean,
Exactly.
What can you not love about honey?
Exactly.
That's a jar of honey.
Wow.
Oh my God, that's the
Now
biggest jar
that's
of honey I've ever seen.
right. That is
Yeah, it's
legit.
huge.
And
That's
it's so
awesome.
dark too. Is it because of the sheer amount that's in there, or is it because of the where the
Time of
bees
year.
had
Yeah.
access?
So yeah, there's they have different flows of honey. So they have the spring flow, the fall flow, and the summer flow. And I believe, if I remember right, this was the fall flow, which tends to be was a darker honey. So that's why it was so dark compared to the other flows. Usually, from what I recall, the spring flow is a lighter flow, and then I think it gets darker as it goes throughout the year. But this is I believe, probably a quart or half a gallon. Actually, this may be a half a gallon. It's pretty big.
Wow.
That's big.
That's
You know what
insane.
I love is because we in my part of New England, it's just literally around us dozens of places where people are, producing their own. So we buy it, from various places, and it doesn't. Not only does it taste different over the course of the year, but from place to place because of what the bees were exposed to for botany. You just get different. The flavor of the honey that we might buy out at, say, Shelburne or Charlemont is different than what it is if we buy out in Barry or Petersham in that part, east of the Quabbin. It's fantastic. It's like it's right from wherever it came from, right from that meadow, right from that little part of a valley or whatever, where the bees are pollinating, and it plays right into the product.
Right.
And you're not going to get that with a honey too that's been sitting on the shelves of a store for X number of months too,
Right.
or made in
Right.
China.
Right.
Not to
Yeah.
put that
Right. Right.
but
What got you into making honey and owning bees, Doug?
I like cooking, and I like doing. I had chickens. I've raised chickens.
Okay.
I do a lot of pig roasts every year. I've been doing that for about 15 years, and
Oh wow.
I enjoy different artistic, things as it relates to hobbies. So I felt, it was calming to me, doing the bees. And
Yeah.
one time I got stung 20 times. I dropped an entire hive, and all the bees came flying out and stung me on my back and a bunch of things. I ended up having to get steroid injections, but yeah.
Oh, wow.
Other than that one time, I was fine
Wow.
raising the bees.
Right. That is the one downside.
and
I
when
guess,
you
having
and I
bees
first
is-
met, you were involved in an operation. Well, you were involved in several operations, but the one that we were focused on for business incubation was attempting to get into the hemp space,
Yes.
which I still find that space interesting because of all of the various uses potentially as an industrial uses of hemp as a product. It's quite remarkable.
Yep, I'm a part owner of a Rhode Island licensed hemp company,
Oh wow.
and we manufacture CBD, CBG products, and that's a very interesting industry business, and it's continuing to grow. So that's been a lot of fun.
Right. What is CBG? So I know what CBD is. Is it just a very similar strain of makeup? Because I know it's all just that chemical makeup, right, of the actual plant itself.
So cannabis, which is marijuana, and hemp comes from basically a similar family.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost they're pretty much it's one and the same. What differentiates it two is, from a federal perspective, does it have under 0.3% THC, which is hemp, or it's over that, which is considered cannabis. So
Okay.
hemp has been around for a long time, since the
Mhm.
days of our founding fathers. They used it for clothes purposes, and for a lot of different industrial purposes for clothing, and even I believe they smoked it back then. So CBG is a mother molecule to both THC and CBD.
Okay.
So it's not psychoactive. So THC is actually a psychoactive chemical, where CBG is not psychoactive. Does not get you high. THC gets you high. CBD does not get you high, and CBG does not get you high.
As well. Interesting. Okay, is it just supposed to be?
And CBGBs was a really high punk club in the early 1980s in New York
Oh,
City.
was?
Yeah, man. The Talking Heads got their start, and the Police first played there when they came to America. That's CBGBs. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Every
that's
time
cool.
you've ever said CBG, in the back of my head, I'm like, CBGB?
CBGB? CBGB?
Where I'm sure a lot of THC was consumed at one
without
point
a
in time.
doubt.
Probably.
Right? You said the Police played there?
Probably.
Of course.
Probably. Well, it was a lot of punk music then, so I don't know. You know, I think
Is it still
punk
around,
guys
or is
like
it
a lot
gone?
of it's not around anymore. What's that?
Are they still in business, or are they gone? The club.
No, I think they went under a number of years ago. I just can't remember exactly when. It's some time ago, but I think they got caught up, if I'm not mistaken, in the last recession.
Damn.
2008.
Of course, now we'll look it up afterwards. We'll include it in the information on your podcast. It'd be an interesting factoid. I mean, hemp played such a role in the history of this country over and over and over again, even beyond our founding fathers. You know, leading business people like Henry Clay, the great statesman. You know, one of the staple cash crops for decades and decades of his plantation in Kentucky was hemp, and they experimented with refining variations of it, get more product out of it, and he was a leader in the cultivation of it and then the promotion of it as a staple crop over a much wider, that's one of the main reasons, for heading west, and all of that kind of stuff, that they could produce it under a variety of conditions, and that, you had 10 different ways you could make money with it.
Right. The ultimate cash crop.
Interesting stuff. Well, maybe we'll have you back on sometime, and we'll focus our talk on the intricacies of hemp.
Right, and go even deeper into honey as well. Figure out, because did you know? So, just real quick, it's an anecdote now. So, in this process of trying to make this mead and learning to make it, Doug, about how much honey do you usually get out of a harvest at one time?
It depends. So I would say that the most you can typically get out in a perfect situation is the very most is around 200 pounds off a hive.
Oh, wow.
And that's in if all the stars align and you can, everything works out in a perfect situation. Very rarely it's ever a perfect situation. It's very, very difficult to raise bees. But in a perfect situation, I'd say you can get 200 pounds in a year, but most people don't. Most people are getting between 50 and 100 pounds. And a lot of people, I'd say in New England, 50% of the hives don't even make it through the winter. So people are starting from scratch. And if they die, it's very, very difficult in our climate to have bees, survive through the winter. So if you're in the southern part of the United States or the western, it's easier, but in our environment, it's very, very difficult. So,
and then you've got the issues of colony collapse and stuff like that, which has also affected the Northeast for many years. Correct?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Well, the point I was trying to make is, so I've learned that it takes for about 1 gallon of mead, which is just honey wine essentially. For those that don't know. It takes about 3 pounds to 1 gallon. So I thought it was smaller batches of honey. So I'm like, almost your entire honey harvest.
3 pounds to 1 gallon.
Yeah, it almost. I always spend a lot of money on honey that day. So
wow.
Well, if you want advice, offline, because there's a lot that goes into that. Right. I give you some tips and some tricks, and if I were you, if you're going to start producing mead, whether it's even on a smaller or a slightly larger basis, how to go about still what I would consider getting a local honey, but getting it a lot less expensive. Right. Because when you're dealing that type of quantity on a commercial basis, unless you can deal with a farm that's going to give it to you relatively inexpensive. You almost need to get it from a commercial grower that's more local. So
Right.
there's a lot of stuff out of New York that you can, a lot of large commercial growers out of New York that you can approach and get what you need on a relatively, or New Hampshire and New York on a relatively less expensive basis, because it's going to cost you a fortune if you start doing mead at the rates of a couple pounds here, a couple pounds there.
Right. No. Yeah, right. Right. It was a surprise that I was not quite ready for. I should say my wallet was not quite ready for, but I'm excited. I think maybe bees are my next investment, though. I think that's what I'm learning today. So.
Well, if you get to raising bees, I have some books to recommend. I have a few of them. I'll get the Encyclopedia of Bees. That's a good one. And then there's a few other ones I'll tell you about later. Maybe you can put them in the podcast information.
Right.
Cool. See, ladies and gentlemen, this is real partnership at work here, relationship building, entrepreneurship style. This is what the Are We Here Yet podcast is here for.
This is why we are here. Are we here yet? We are here yet.
We are here. We are certainly here. Doug, we're going to have a complete information on you in the episode page for this episode of the podcast. But nonetheless, I want you to right now reiterate the name of the agency you've started and whatever contact information you would like to leave.
So the name of the agency is Kingston Insurance Agency. We're located in Rhode Island. And soon to be, hopefully, we can get an office in southeastern Massachusetts. This is what our phone number is area code 401-433-9442. And my email is dgilbert, which is GUILBERT, at KingstonInsuranceAgency.com.
Awesome. It's been a real pleasure having you on. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for
Great.
coming on.
Cam, you've done such a wonderful job once again.
I was very happy to talk about honey in my mead today.
And we get to talk about honey and mead and all that other kind of exciting stuff too. That's right.
I want to talk about Foo Fighters and your background poster.
Oh.
Dave Grohl.
I know, right?
I said that at the start. This whole podcast could have been that. next time. I love me my Dave.
See a couple of Gen Xers commiserating with the millennial. Dave Grohl is such a universal character.
Right? The power of Foo Fighters, man.
Actually,
Gentlemen,
hold on. Let me just show you one.
Oh, wait a minute. One more thing before we go. He's got something exciting.
See, yeah, well, Scott, this will make the whole episode worth it.
Is that a wood?
Sweet. You were there.
99.
I was there.
I got friends that went. I didn't get to go. I was on tour.
Yep. So actually, I saw them. I saw Foo Fighters, and I know they're on this.
Yeah.
I think if they're big or small on here.
That's amazing.
Foo Fighters.
I might have to steal that from you, Doug. I'm sorry.
They were just after Insane Clown Posse.
Before they got big. I don't see them. You know what's weird is that they're not on here, but I know they were there.
Yeah.
I saw them in concert, and it was awesome. They were great.
It's pretty funny to think that they were so not huge yet that they're like in the fine print or something.
Well,
Yeah.
right?
I thought by 99, I thought they were right up there as far as stature and stuff, but maybe not. I guess
Right,
not. I
it's-
could be
I
off.
don't-
So this is
I would've
actually
guessed
a
that too,
T-shirt from the Woodstock event. So,
Oh, cool.
it's a-
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
so I framed the T-shirt.
Nice. Look at the names on it: Rusted Root, Creed.
Bush,
Right.
Alanis Morissette there.
That was the Woodstock
Corn.
where they premiered the Insane Clown Posse. You know why that's funny? Besides the name being so ridiculous, the Insane Clown Posse was actually signed to a major record label deal by Disney.
What?
Because the executives there were so out of it, the suits. They were like really desperate to have their own next, Britney Spears hit, right? They needed another youth hit. And then somebody said, oh, I know of this rap group called Insane Clown Posse. That sounds like something we should sign.
Oh my
So they
God.
signed them sight unseen. And then after they started promoting them, that's when all the executives at the high office realized what they had signed, because they had them come to Disney and they played a concert at Disney.
And everyone's like, eyeballs go.
People like, and then they were like, we got to get out of this contract. And Insane Clown Posse was like, sure, just pay us the entire advance right now. You know, I mean, we'll walk, but you need to pay us the early buyout. And so they stayed for like 7 years, Insane Clown Posse with Disney.
No way.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember seeing their performance at Woodstock 99 on tape, on watching on television, and just being horrified. You know, I was just coming out of music school and finally finishing up after working in the record business for a couple of years in the interim, and just being like, is this what the future of the music business looks like? I said, surely it can't get any dumber than this. And then, of course, the years 2000 to 2020 happened. You know?
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
You never hear about them anymore. They're pretty much whatever happened to them.
Go figure. You know, the Insane Clown Posse ain't
big
clowning around anymore. Well, it's been a real pleasure to have you guys on. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Cam. I'm your host, Scott M. Graves, for another episode wrapping up of SMG's Are We Here Yet podcast. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.